So I have told you this is the maxillary hiatus in a disarticulated skull. In an articulated skull, this maxillary hiatus is reduced by few bones. That is the uncinate process of the ethmoid bone and the descending process of the lacrimal bone from above, and from below it is the maxillary process of the inferior nasal concha. From behind it is the maxillary process of the perpendicular plate of the palatine bone. So this is how this maxillary hiatus is reduced in size. There are two small openings, that is the one below the uncinate process and one above the uncinated process, through which this maxillary sinus opens into the middle meatus through hiatus semilunarius. So this is the reduction of the maxillary hiatus. Now coming to the processes of the maxilla. This is the zygomatic process, which is directed laterally, and it is formed by the junction of the orbital surface, anterior surface and the infratemporal surface. We can see here this it has an rough articulated surface on the upper side which articulates with the maxillary process of the zygomatic bone. This is the zygomatic bone which articulates with the this zygomatic process. This is a zygomatic process and this is the zygomatic bone. This is the frontal process. Frontal process, it is present between the nasal bone and the lacrimal bone. This frontal process, it is directed upwards and it has a tip which articulates with the nasal notch of the frontal bone. Medially, it has an anterior border and then it has a posterior border, medial surface and a lateral surface. This anterior border articulates with the nasal bone, posterior border with the lacrimal bone, and here on the lateral surface it is divided by the anterior lacrimal crest into the anterior surface and the posterior surface. This anterior lacrimal crest is continuous inferiorly with the infraorbital margin. Now this lateral surface is divided into two parts, that is the anterior part and the posterior part. This lacrimal crest, this anterior lacrimal crest gives attachment to the lacrimal fascia and the medial palpebral ligament, and above and below it orbicularis oculi muscle. So we can see here, this is the frontal process, this is the anterior lacrimal crest. This is the medial palpebral ligament, above and below it is the orbicularis oculi muscle. Lateral to it gives attachment to levator labii superioris echinaceae. Levator labii superioris echinaceae. So these are the attachments of the muscles here. Posteriorly, it presents a groove. Posteriorly, a groove is present which is completed by another groove present on the lacrimal bone, and it forms a groove that lodges the lacrimal sac. It forms the lacrimal fossa that lodges the lacrimal sac. So here a notch is present which is directed into the lacrimal sac. So this was about the lateral surface of this frontal process. On the medial process, this is the medial surface. On the medial surface, an oblique ethmoidal crest is present. Oblique ethmoidal crest is present which articulates with the middle nasal concha. It is here to note that inferior nasal concha is a separate bone and the middle concha and the superior concha are parts of the ethmoid bone. So here it is the middle meatus is present here. Below this part is the middle meatus. Below the ethmoidal crest and above this conchal crest, the part is known as the atrium, which is the anterior expanded part of the middle meatus. The ethmoidal crest, anteriorly there is a small ridge which is the agar nasae. We can see here, this is the ethmoidal crest is present here. The posterior part articulates with the middle concha, which is a part of ethmoid bone, and the anterior part is known as the agar nasae. The part between the conchal crest and this, it is the atrium, which is the anterior expanded part of the middle meatus. So this was about the frontal process. Next is the alveolar process. This alveolar process is wider behind and than the front, and it is thinner in the front. This is excavated here by the sockets for the sockets of the tooth, and it lodges the roots of the teeth. So here there are eight sockets are present here. The first two for the incisor, then canine, then two premolars are present, and after that 3 molars are present. So it is the incisor, 2 incisor, canine, 2 premolar, and then 3 molars are present. We can see in the molar there are the 3 sockets for the roots of the this molar tooth. The alveolar process of the opposite alveolar process of opposite maxilla unite together, and it forms the alveolar arch. Just above this, at the outer border, it gives attachment to the buccinator muscle, which extends up to the first molar tooth. So it is the attachment of the buccinator muscle here. We can see here, this is the buccinator muscle here just above the 3 molar tooth. So this was about the alveolar process.